Welcome to It Begins With Us, the podcast about domestic violence abuse. It is our mission to help anyone in a domestic violence situation. We started this podcast
as a safe space for survivors to tell their stories.
Completely confidential.
We can disguise your voice.
You can be off camera, and we're here to listen. Let's get started.
Welcome to our podcast.
It Begins With Us,
a podcast about domestic violence survivors. My name's Maria. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I came from a relationship of my first marriage of almost a year. I was with my partner for almost 3 years. He was very abusive in every single way that you could think of. When I got out of that relationship, I was really shocked to learn that there was a lot of other types of abuse other than just physical abuse. There's so many other types of abuse. Like, I had no idea that there's spousal rape. I thought that because we were married that he had free range to my body as he pleased, and I had no idea that that's not okay. Every time he would try to pleasure himself on me, and I would cry, beg him to please stop, tell him no. He would keep going, and that's spousal rape. I also didn't know that there is financial abuse also. Them keeping you from spending even your own money, or them, in my situation, I was the one that worked. He didn't work, and he wouldn't let me spend money on myself or things that I needed, but everything went to him. I know in a lot of other cases, it's the other way around. It's usually the other partner only works, and they don't allow their partner to they don't allow the victim to work, so that way they don't have a way out of the relationship because they have to fully depend financially on their partner. There's also mental abuse, when they tell you that nobody's gonna love you the way that they love you. They tell you situations where you believe them. I know my ex-husband would say that I had a bad relationship with my parents. I came from a bad relationship and with them, and that's why I moved in with him right when I turned 18 and I married him. He would say, not even your own parents want you. Like, why would anybody want you? I'm the only one that loves you. And he would make me believe that so that I wouldn't leave. Obviously the most common one is physical abuse, which he would physically beat me anytime I would be upset over things that he would do. I was very closed off. Every time I'd find out he was cheating on me or he would do things to upset me, I would be quiet. I would shut down. I wouldn't talk. And he hated that. That brought out the anger in him, and he'd talk to me, look at me. And of course I didn't want to talk to him. And he would get so angry that he would hit me on my face with his full fist, throw me down the stairs. He would punch me. He would kick me in the ribs. And yeah, I don't know. What other types of abuse, have you guys experienced or know of anybody that's experienced?
But I'm Angelica. I'm also a domestic violence survivor. I was in a relationship for 15 years before I finally decided to leave. My abuse was both physical and mental abuse. If I was minutes late from getting off of any job, I would get hit really bad. I would get accused of cheating on him, having relationships, which is why I was late. So then after that, I wasn't allowed to wear certain things to work. I had to wear baggy clothes. I had to not wear any makeup to cover any of the bruises. I was always told that I am a mom and that's all I am. So there's a lot of, you know, I guess you could call them red flags at the time, but when you're so young, I mean, I was with him when I was 14. And so you think that it's just how relationships are, especially if it's your first real one. And that's what I thought. I thought that it was okay for him to call me names, and I thought that it was okay for him to hit me because I honestly felt like I deserved it. Every time that he would hit me and every time he would call me names, like I honestly felt like I deep down deserved to get hurt. And it would be to the point where he would hide my kids and close the door, and it got to the point where I got tired of him hitting me in the face and, tired of seeing all the bruises, that then he started hitting me on my arms and on my legs, and my legs from like my kneecaps up, like I have no feeling. And so I can't feel like some of the bruises that I get from like the gym, or if I like walk into something, like I can't feel them. And so a lot of the times my current husband will be like, dude, where'd you get that bruise? And I'm like, I don't know, because I can't feel it. So I have to have that as a constant reminder that I did something wrong to deserve that. And I didn't, but it takes a long time to be able to see yourself more than what they say. And I think that's the hardest part for any of us survivors, is trying to not relive those moments in your head and to be able to forgive yourself for thinking that you deserved it, to be able to overcome that.
Yeah. And there's a huge difference, like, in believing that you're a survivor, you're not a victim. Being a victim, having that mentality that you're a victim, like, doesn't let you escape. You keep living that. But if you decide that, you're a survivor, that you are more than that, that you are overcame it, it doesn't define you. I know we talk about it constantly here on the show, and this is because it's a safe space for here. But I live my life, and there's months that I go without thinking about what happened to me, or um I also came from my second marriage, that I was married for 10 years. There was no physical abuse or sexual abuse, and I thought there was no cheating also. So I thought because there was none of that, like, that relationship was okay, even though there was a lot of mental and emotional abuse from there. And that's it's hard to prove, and it's hard to even believe yourself for a long time, because you keep thinking, well, they're not hitting me, so they're not abusing me. They're not cheating on me, so they must not be abusing me. They're not being mean to me. But they are, like, they're always constantly putting you down. That's abuse, when they're constantly putting you down and telling you that you're worthless, that you're not, the person that you are, because of their own traumas, their own beliefs, that they don't feel good enough for you, and so they try to make you feel like that you shouldn't think that you're good enough, like that you're not this great person, because they don't want you to leave.
My name is Sisha, and I have thankfully never been through any type of relationship abuse, but having, friends and then family members go through it, you don't realize the mental and like emotional impact that it has on the outside world, right? Like, a lot of times it's, I don't know, I guess you just don't realize when things like that happen, that it does affect the people you're calling, late at night. Like, I know when you would call and, you'd call Dylan and to help you. As a wife, like, you want to jump up and be like, I need to go help her. But it's like she's calling somebody who she can trust, and you just don't realize how much of an impact it has on somebody's feelings. Because I mean, when she would call, the impact I would see with Dylan, I was just like, wow. Like it's really deep, and it's hard to talk about because it really does affect somebody. And you don't realize it until you're in that position.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. And that's why I'm here, like, because to hear other people's stories and stuff, like we were talking earlier, like, because I've never been a part of it, so I just see it in movies or, whatever. But when you really know people, it's like a whole new story.
It's crazy. Like, it opens your eyes. Like, wow, it's not fake. Like, it's not just in movies. It's in real life. Yeah, and honestly, like, as a mother, I feel like it begins with us. It begins with us teaching our children what's safe, what's not, and what's okay. I had this conversation actually today with somebody I'm really close to. Like, when did you start seeing the red flags? Like, when was the first time your first husband abused you physically? And I said, well, he did it in front of you guys, But we remember, I grew up in an abusive household with my parents physically. Like, they weren't abusive to each other. They were abusive to us as kids. And so anytime my mom, especially, she would beat us a lot. And every time she would beat us, she said, that wouldn't have happened if you weren't bad. You deserved that. Or I beat you because I love you, because I want you to do better. So that was engraved. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm bad, or they love me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I hate that saying. I used to say it to my daughter all the time when she was little. Well, if a boy picks on you, he must like you. And then I had, it's been forever ago, but another mom was like, I used to say that too, until I really sat back and thought, what is that putting into her mind as she gets older?
Right.
Right? Like, we have told her whole life, if a boy hits you, if a boy pushes you or picks on you, he must really like you. Mm-hmm. And then here we are thinking, her thinking, oh, well, God forbid my husband hits me, he must really love me.
Yeah.
And I think so many parents need to stop telling their little girls that, even the boys.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, she must like you if she does this. Like, it can go both ways. Right. But that got me thinking on that little saying.
Yeah. And, coming back to that that moment, the first time that I was hit physically by my ex-husband, it was such a small thing, the reason why he hit me. I walked in front of the TV while he was playing a video game. And I was just walking to sit down, and he lost the game because it distracted him for 2 seconds while I walked in front of him. And what he did, with his full fist, this guy was 300 pounds and I was 120 pounds. I was just tiny. He hit me so hard. I think it was on the shoulder. Like, I don't even remember. It knocked me down on the couch. And I was in shock. I was just like, whoa, like, what happened? And he's like, see, I hit you. You didn't think about that I was going to lose the game. Like, you weren't thinking. It's your fault that I lost the game. If you would have walked in front of me, I wouldn't have hit you. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, it's my fault.
Yeah. Guilt that you feel. And then,
that's what I was trained my whole life. Like, that if I did bad, I was going to get punished physically. And so I didn't see that anything wrong. And I still wasn't married to him. I still didn't live with him. I could have walked away if I would have known that was, and
the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember another time, a month before I moved in with him, he was starting to get sexually abusive, where he would try to force me to have sex. And I was younger. I didn't think it was right. I was raised with very strict values. And it was his birthday. It was coming up his birthday, and he's like, you know, this is like, you're gonna give it to me.
Yeah.
And I said, no, like, I have things to do. I have my parents trust me, and I'm not gonna do this. And nope, you're going to do this. You're gonna do it. You owe it to me. And I just kept saying, no, I'm not. And he would not let me go from the car. And my dad was outside watching till he finally came out, and he said, if you don't come inside, I'm gonna grab you by the hairs and drag you inside myself. So then he knew, you know, like, I better go. And when that happened, I was actually chosen as one of the students. 2 students out of the whole school got chosen for the Hispanic Youth Symposium. And I got chosen. And I was so grateful. I felt so amazing and happy to do that. Well, my dad was so upset at me for not going inside the first time he asked me to go inside, that he told me, I'm not taking you to the bus for you to go to the symposium tomorrow. And so I got to miss out on these scholarships because my ex didn't want to let me go, because he wanted, you know, to abuse me. And I called him crying that night, and I said, my dad's not taking me to the bus stop, and I'm not allowed to go get a ride, so I'm going to miss out. And he said, oh, yeah? Now you know what it feels like to be rejected. And I always remember those words because they hurt so much. I cried all night. I was like, I missed out on all these scholarships because he was trying to force me. I could have just said, yeah, I'll lie to them and say that we're going to go get gas. And I'm like, it could have just been that easy. But I missed out on the symposium because he was trying to do that to me. And he made it like I owed him, you know, because it was his birthday. And it's not okay. If you say no, it means no. You don't owe anybody your body. So, yeah. And I sadly, I didn't see, you know, that I didn't know, I didn't have the knowledge. Nobody ever taught me like that wasn't okay. And then a month later, I moved in with him. And then within a few weeks, I mean, it was a few weeks after I moved in with him, that the physical abuse just exploded. Like, it was almost every day, every week. I had bruises. There was one time that he hit me so hard, he asked me to pop a pimple on his back. It wasn't like we were fighting. He asked me to pop a pimple, and it hurt. And he turned around and punched me so hard on my knee, like right below my knee. He left a huge bruise. And at work, I had to say that I closed the car door on my leg because I was limping for days. And that's when you got to realize, when you're making excuses to people on what happened, that's abuse. When you're making excuses,
Trying to cover up for them and what they've done to you.
yeah, yep, yeah. I know. That was probably the second time it happened while I was living with him. The first time was when I found out that he was cheating. I felt so lost. I had no relationship with my parents. I had nowhere to go. And to find out that he had a porn addiction and a sex addiction. And he was talking to all these girls, soliciting them. He was 20 years old at the moment, at that time. And he was talking to 14, 15, and 16-year-old girls. And it was the same subject every single time. He had like a disgusting fantasy for virgins. Like, he wanted to be the first one. And that was the conversation he had with every single one of them. So when I found that out, I didn't know what to do. I just walked out the front door. It was my first day at work. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I walked out, and he chased after me, screaming, like, where are you going? Like, he thought everything was great. He didn't know I found out. And then I come back, And that's the first and only time I've ever done that, that I went to slap him. I wanted to punch him. And the first thing he did, instead of asking why or anything, he fought back, like with 1,000% power. That's one thing that we think we may lift at the gym and be fit, and we can be strong women, but the strength in the difference between a man and a woman is so big. I felt like a twig compared to him, and it didn't even matter like the size difference. It was just, I don't know, the way my bone density compared to his. Me just slapping him did nothing to him compared to him just simply pushing me forward. I mean, I hit the ground and he started just punching me. I still have a little dip right here in my nose where he carved a piece of skin out because he wanted to like scratch at my face. I had scratches all over my neck. I had to call my work and say, hey, like something happened and I can't make it to work. I was 2 or 3 hours late. I had to cover up with all the makeup I could. It was in June. It was hot. I had to wear, I wore one of those Aeropostale sweaters that went like this. And yeah. And I had to cover up. And people were like, aren't you hot? And I'm like, no, I'm always cold. And I had to cover up like that for weeks because of all these bruises. And yeah, it's like, it's not okay. And I had to stay. I had nowhere to go. And that's the saddest part. I'm really glad that Angelica's came up with this mission, this shelter that we're trying to find so we can open up, because I think it's going to open up a lot of doors for people that have nowhere to go, that can't escape. Because some of the women that are stuck there, I thank God all the time when I remember that I escaped. Because if you look at the statistics of where I had nobody on my side, nobody knew, nobody supported me, like my own family didn't want me, they didn't care, I could have stayed, and I am sure that I wouldn't be here anymore if I would have stayed. There's women that haven't been able to get out, that have died. I mean, we just had over a little bit over a month ago, just
2 months now.
Yeah, one here recently,
Rexburg.
Right. And it's really sad, when it's too late. But we gotta, I don't know, it takes a lot of strength. I don't know why, like I said, I thank God all the time that he gave me the strength to get out, to know that it wasn't okay, that I couldn't live there anymore, that it was me getting out, being scared to get out, or being in the grave.
There was many times that I look back, when I talk to my children and, and they tell me hey, I missed out on a lot of years because we were never able to go play at a friend's house, and we weren't ever able to go on a good road trip without you guys fighting. Having to hear your own children say that they missed out on a lot, that just goes to show me I made a mistake by staying for so long. And every time it would get worse and worse and worse. And I remember we had made this crazy trip to go to California. We were going to Disneyland. And I remember that if I didn't have a really good deal on a hotel or a really good deal on, a transit van, I would get in a lot of trouble and I would get hurt because of it. When we were in California, we had already gotten in a fight right as soon as we got to Disneyland because it was already hot, and the kid's dad freaked out because it was hot and he was angry, and we were super hungry, but we couldn't get anything to eat, and it was because everything was expensive, and just the amount of fighting that we went through, that like that doesn't make it fun for the kids that are sitting in the back seat like excited to go to Disneyland, and they just hear us fight all the time. It's hard not, like we don't, like we see it but we don't feel it until later on. Like I didn't realize how much my kids had seen and how much they've heard until they started opening up to me about it. And to be able to hear like my oldest, say like, I can't go do this because I'm worried about you, or, I'm too late for that. Like you shouldn't have to you shouldn't have to put you shouldn't have to put your kids second because you make the dumb decision by staying with somebody that you know that you shouldn't be. And I think that that's another important value, is I want to kind of spread that across, like within our shelter that we're trying to open, is that you're so much more than what they say you are. Because when they're mean to you and they're hurting you and they're punching you and they're choking you and they're doing all these horrible things to you, do you think that they give 5 seconds to think about that they're actually hurting you enough to stop and to not do it again? So why are we, as victims at the time, like why do we give them the benefit of the doubt that they're never going to do it again? And I guess that took me a long time to stop beating myself up on that, because I should have known better, and I caved every time they said they were sorry. Yeah. You get your presents, you get your flowers, you get your, let's go on a date, I'm really sorry, like I won't ever hurt you again. And then, I get my rib pushed out the next day. Like I hate that we go through that psychological crap, and it does so much more damage when you finally leave, because then you play all of these times in your head and you're like, why? Why did I not leave when he did this? Or why didn't I not leave when, that's the hardest part for me, I feel like, is to hear my kids say, like, I missed out on so much, and then,
Yeah. Yeah, and it is sad how many times we go back and back thinking, like, they make all these promises. I remember the first time, like, he cheated, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't know where I was going to go. I really had nowhere. But I wanted him to change. There was no other option for me. So I tried to make him believe, like, I'm going to leave if you don't stop this, if you don't fix this. And he told me he would never do it again. He did it again. The second time he did it, it was even more believable. I made it more believable that I was going to leave. And I was like, I didn't know where I was going to go, but I was going to leave somewhere. And he told me, he said, I'm not married to you. I don't have to be faithful to you. And I thought, what's like the difference between marriage and what we have now, other than a piece of paper?
The paper.
Yeah. We were living together. We didn't have kids yet, but that was the plan, for the future. I was paying for his college. I was helping pay the bills at his parents' house. We were sleeping together every single night. Like,
right.
What else? Like, we had been together for 2 years already. Like, what else? Just a piece of paper that said we were married, and he was allowed to cheat on me because he wasn't married to me. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, then I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm going to leave. He got down on his knees, praying, begging me to please not leave, that he was going to marry me the next day. He went out and got a ring the next day and promised that he would never do it again. And I think it was probably 2 days after we actually got married, I found out he was still cheating. It never changed.
Yeah. He was just telling you what you wanted to hear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as an outsider, like, we always think, because I used to think this before I really got into, like, knowing people who have actually been through it. Walk out.
Yeah.
Just leave.
Right.
Oh, she's posting on social media he brought her flowers. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, you're obviously not hurting if, you seem fine now. Yeah. But like you said, it's all so much psychological. And I don't think people, unless they truly have been through it, know
right
how much of that psychological abuse is there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And you can sit there and say over and over that you'll never be that person to stay if they cheat on you or if they hurt you physically or in any way. But when you're there,
It's different.
it is different. You thought that you were this strong person, but when you're there, you're not.
You're
They
opposite.
suck you in.
Yep.
Yep, they suck you in. They tell you things are gonna get so much better. Everything that
Yeah.
you want to hear, they tell you.
Right.
And then, 2-3 days go by, a week, maybe even 2. And then it goes back to the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
Yep.
Every time. You think we would learn, but it's a lot harder, like you said. It's a lot harder once you're in that situation. And, it just goes to show, like, people that have never been in that kind of situation, they're not going to ever understand. So they're just going to say, whatever it is that's at the top of their head without even realizing how much damage is done already,
And in our mind, I mean, we met this person when they were up here. They were amazing. And then slowly starting to, become this other person.
Yep.
And they always keep bringing up this person that they were here. So you think that they're going to be that person again, but they're not. They were just pretending from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because, like, I remember there would be times where I would be helping my kids' dad, like, in the garage working on cars, and if I grabbed the wrong tool because, forbid me not knowing every dang tool that was in that freaking box, like, to be able to get hit, and to be able to get yelled at and feel very belittled because I didn't know any better. But then you go back and you cry and you're like, well, why didn't I know that? Like, I should know that. And I hate that game because it happens every time. It doesn't matter, like, you didn't know he was going to lose his game. Like, I didn't know that I grabbed the wrong tool. And there's always these excuses, but they are so good at manipulating you to making you feel like everything is your fault.
And I'm always like, who the hell hurt these people as children? Who hurt you? But it does make me wonder, like, is this what they grew up around?
Right.
It's no excuse for it, but how does one become, like, I could never look at okay, I shouldn't say that because I can strangle him sometimes, but I could not physically, like, look at my husband and think, I want to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what, like, these people are so sick in the head.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm pretty tiny. I mean, I'm 4'11", and I'm like 130 pounds, give take. And, the kid's dad is, I don't know, 6'8", 6'9", something like that. He's a pretty hefty dude.
You're like a rag doll.
I'm just, and I'm so tiny. And the hardest part for me is that when I finally left and I, went through counseling and I went through all these, medical things because I, had a really bad concussion to where I had fluid in the back of my head, like, to go through all of that, to be able to find myself again, to be able to stop twitching, to be able to, like, physically block him from my life, because I know that if it wasn't for your husband saving me that night, if it wasn't for, like, everything that was done for me, I would have went back. Yeah. And if I would have went back, who knows if I would have been alive.
Sure.
And that's the scariest part, is that you have to know when to stop, and you have to know who to trust to be able to actually get out. Because to get out by yourself, it's not easy, because then you're going to be like, oh, well, I miss when he was a good person, and I miss, he's texting me, or he's calling me, he's leaving me messages, he's sending me flowers. Like, I had to physically block him from my life. I had to suspend his line because he was on my phone plan. I had to block him from everything that I can think of. I had to go get a protection order. Like, I had to do all of these things in order to make myself get away.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to me to open up this center and the shelter, is because I've been through it all, and I know all the psychological games. I mean, I'm not going to say that all our stories are the same, because they're not.
Sure.
But I know that circle. I know that pattern, and I know that it is so hard to break that, because you're like, well, he's not always a bad person. But when he's a bad person, it doesn't matter if the day before he bought you flowers or made you dinner. Like, the only things that that run through your head are all of the times that he hurt you, all the times that he name called you. You know, I know that there would be times that I would, you know, see coworkers out in public at a Halloween store, and they would wave at me and I would wave back. And the second we got into that car, I would get backhanded. And it's just because, oh, so you talk to them outside of work? Like, you think it's okay? Like, it's a coworker.
Yeah.
Like, you literally show up at my work every time that I get off work if I'm not off on time. When do I have time? When do I have time to talk to somebody? Like, it's
like they come up with excuses.
Yeah, they come up with excuses to be mean.
To be mean and
Yeah.
to hit you or...
Yeah, and I remember one time we were at Walmart, and he went into the store, and I was in the car with the kids, and he called me. He was like, hey, I'm paying. So, you know, Walmart's parking lot's huge, you know, and he doesn't tell me, like, what entrance he's coming out of. And so then he's constantly calling me, like, where the F are you? You're supposed to be up here, blah, blah, blah. Well, I remember I, like, pull up to the entrance, and he's all yelling at me, and this random lady in the parking lot's like, hey, don't talk to her like that. And he like ignored her, and she like comes up to the car, and she was like, don't effing talk to her like that. And he was like, lady, why don't you effing worry about yourself? Like, and like he like yanks me out of the driver's seat and like throws me. He's like, get your ass in the car. And as my children are sitting there, and for the longest time, my kids, like my 3 older kids, never said anything. They just sat there in silence. Every time that we would fight, they sat there in silence. It wasn't until, I don't know, like maybe 3 years ago. I mean, it's been a little over 4 years now since I've been actually away from all that. But for them to finally open up and be like, we saw everything. Like, we heard everything. Like, to be able to hear them say that, like, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Because then you always think, like, oh, they're not going to remember that. But no, they remember. They have, like, a little tape recorder that plays rewind all the time. Like, they know.
Yeah. I don't know how it was for you when you left, but I remember when I left, it plays so many times in my head. It would play in nightmares all the time, me leaving. If we could write a good plot for a, what do you call those movies? Like
a sequel?
No, a movie that's a suspenseful movie.
Oh, yeah.
A scary, suspenseful movie. It would be the time I left away from him.
Yep.
I remember him pulling up, and I was telling my coworker, like, hey, I have to leave early today. And I had just started working there 2 weeks. I don't think I had even been 2 weeks. And I said, please let me leave early. Well, why? What happened? And I said, there's abuse. And that's all I had to say. And he said, you can go early. As I was walking out the back door, I mean, there was the front and back door facing each other. I was walking out the back door, and there's double doors in the front. And he was walking through the front double doors, the first one, when I walked out the back door. I remember jumping a fence to the bank across the street, and I stayed in the bushes just waiting for him to find me. I felt like I was a mouse cornered. Like he just knew where I was at. Even though, I mean, how could he possibly know? Like, he wasn't going to know when I left. Right. Yeah. You know, he didn't see me. He didn't look up when I opened that back door. But I was just waiting for him to show up behind that bush to grab me and kill me, because he had threatened me so many times to actually kill me if I ever tried to leave. I remember making phone calls because he didn't notice right away. I mean, he got there 15 minutes early to my work to pick me up, so he knew I wasn't off of work. He probably thought I was in the back somewhere or in the bathroom or something. He didn't realize, like, I had actually left. So for 15 minutes, I called 2 people, 2 of my friends, said, hey, from my previous job, because they kind of knew a little bit. Like, they could see the signs, and they asked me questions. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to say what was happening to me. I was embarrassed because everybody thought we had such a great relationship. Like, everybody thought it was the relationship, you know? because he would show up to work with flowers, or he was just so nice to me. He'd always go pick me up, and he'd just be like, babe, I love you, in front of everybody, show me off, and it really wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And so when I called these two girls, we made a plan. One of them was going to pick me up because she lived really close by. She was going to take me to her house and wait there until the other one could pick me up and take me out of town so I could go to the Women's Violence Center the next day at 7 a.m. when they opened. Well, by the time I got picked up, I thought he was already following us. While I was still waiting at my friend's house, it had been maybe 30 minutes. He had already got back home because he realized I was missing, and he tried to get everybody to talk, but nobody would talk at my work. I mean, only one coworker knew that I had left. The other ones had no idea. And he left out of there just rushing to see if I would go back to the house to pick up anything. And he starts going through phone calls. I had Verizon at the time, and I was on his line, so he could see what phone calls I had made. So right away, he knew the one friend and then the other friend, and started contacting them. Went to their house. My friend that took me out of town, she lived with her grandma at the moment, and he went to the grandma's house because it was a few blocks away from his house, and tried to knock down the door and raided their whole house to make sure I wasn't there and threatened them. Then he went to my employer's house and wanted to know where I was at. It was a relative of mine, and he threatened them with immigration, with legal, that he was going to call the cops on them, all kinds of things, allegations. I don't know if he went to my parents' house, but I know he called my parents right away too. And then both of the girls that I had gone with, they got calls while I was there. So I was like, he knows my tracks. He knows where I'm at. So I turned off my phone completely because that's when the location thing started. Mm-hmm. It was back into 2010. When you can look up people's locations through with Verizon on the computer. It wasn't through your phones. Now you can look up everybody's location, on your plan through your own phone, but he had to go on the computer. Mm-hmm. It got turned off, so he couldn't find my location. And I ended up leaving town, and I was so scared the whole night. I didn't sleep at all. I slept nothing because I was terrified that he was going to show up, or even that the people I was with, that they were plotting against me, and that they were going to say something and have him come and kill me. Because I didn't know where I was safe at that moment. Right. One of the last fights had been because he thought I was pregnant, and I had been late for 2 weeks. That morning when I woke up, the first thing I did was showered, and I remember I started my period, and I thought, my parents always told me, if you're bad, if you do something bad, God punishes you. If, we hurt you, we punish you because you do something bad, but God also punishes you. So when I got my period that day, I just cried and cried. And I was like, God does love me. He's not punishing me. I must have done something right. I didn't do anything wrong because he didn't allow me to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. I was 2 weeks late, and I wasn't pregnant. I was late because of all the abuse and mental stress.
That trauma. Stress.
Yeah, everything that I was under, that I had been late. I mean, I was so normal every 28 days, and this time it wasn't like that. And yeah, I was so happy that I wasn't pregnant. And then going to the Women's Violence Center, Domestic Violence Center, they helped me. Within a couple hours, we had a protection order against him. I had to go back to work. Then we went to the courthouse. And at the courthouse, they took another, long papers of everything that had happened to me. They didn't ask me to go in front of a judge or anything. They just gave me a protection order right away. And then after the protection order, the cop herself drove me to my work. And she said, if he shows up here and we haven't served him, you just need to tell him that you have a protection order against him. You need to show him this paper. And if he doesn't leave, you can call the cops right away. And I had her number saved. I actually had like a text message going to her to tell her thank you. And as soon as she drove away, he had been parked across the street, hiding at the car wash from my work. And he saw that she left, and he came in my work with, probably a $300 bouquet of flowers.
I would have been like, thanks for the flowers, but here you go.
Yeah, I said, you're not allowed to talk to me. I wouldn't even look at him in the eyes.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I bought you flowers. Please forgive me. Please come back. I'll never do it again. And we can make this work. And just, getting down on his knees, crying. And I said, no. And I went to the back in the kitchen. I worked at a restaurant. And he followed me to the back. He's a big guy. He was, I think, 6'2" or 6'3". Big guy, 300 pounds. Built. And, these little guys working at the restaurant, they're probably 5'5", as tall as me or shorter. They couldn't do anything against him. And they're trying to say, no, like, leave her alone. And I pulled out my phone. I sent the text, he's here. Within 2 minutes, there was 10 cops surrounded the building. And they took him away. It was like a scary movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then a lot of things happen after that, the stalking, threats, spying on me. Like, I would get all these fake Facebook profiles, and they would tell me, I know where you're at. I can see you. Mm-hmm. I know you're at the gym. I know what you drive. It was so scary. Yeah. I know who's at your house, or why is this person at your house, or this car, whose car is that at your house? Yeah. It was scary. I'd always have to be looking behind my back.
The reason why we started this podcast, It Begins With Us, is it's very important for survivors to come together and to talk about their story and talk about their strengths. Since becoming a survivor, I feel like the more we talk about it, the more powerful we become. And it's just super healing, super healing. But with that podcast, it goes along with our new domestic violence center and transition housing, 1614 Revival Foundation, Inc. It's hopefully coming soon. We're just in the process of trying to find our beautiful building. But that's just going to go along with that. And I started that because it is something that's super healing for us as a community to be able to have more additional resources to be able to go to when you are in danger, or you need extra help and you don't want to go to anybody else. Like, we are going to be open 24/7, and don't ever be afraid to come to us when we're open.
This was our first episode. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks, every Thursday. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.
It Begins With Us is a supporting podcast for 1614 Revival Foundation.
Please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever possible. That really helps the show reach more people.
You can follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes. Do not hesitate to reach out. See you next time.